Claire Donovan didn't miss job interviews, especially not ones at prestigious
Yes.
nonprofits like Hartwell Foundation. She clutched her portfolio tighter as she dashed up the granite steps of the century-old building, barely dodging a courier on a bike. Her blazer was slightly wrinkled from the train ride, her heels worn at the soles, but she had rehearsed this pitch in the mirror for 3 days straight. It was her third month unemployed, and this was the kind of place that actually cared about affordable housing, not just posted about it on Earth Day. She double-checked the email confirmation 9:30 a.m. Boardroom 3A, Hartwell Foundation. She was right on time. Except, Boardroom 3A was empty. Claire peeked her head in, then walked further down the hallway. Nothing. She checked her phone again, and that's when she heard footsteps. A sharply dressed woman with a steel expression was walking briskly toward her. "You're early," the woman said curtly, not offering a handshake. "We'll need to improvise." Claire blinked. "Sorry, No time." The woman motioned toward the elevator. "They're already in the conference room." Claire hesitated. This felt off. But before she could clarify, the elevator dinged and the woman ushered her in. As they rode up, Claire tried to speak again, but the woman only said, "Just be confident. You know your background better than anyone." Claire's mouth went dry. When the doors opened, Claire followed her into a spacious, glass-walled conference room. Inside were 5 people in tailored suits, a camera crew, and a man standing near a tall window sipping black coffee. He turned and paused when he saw her. He was older than her early 40s, maybe. Clean-cut, sharp jawline and eyes like steel with something exhausted behind them. He raised an eyebrow. "She's here," the woman announced. Then she turned to Claire, almost daring her to back out. Ready, Claire nodded, throat tight. The cameras started rolling. The man by the window spoke first. "Ms. Donovan, thank you for agreeing to this last-minute appearance. Shall we begin?" Claire smiled stiffly. "Of course." They sat. Someone handed her a mic. The lights were blinding. The man leaned forward, fingers laced together. "What does loyalty mean to you?" Claire blinked. What kind of interview was this? She opened her mouth and started talking. Not from a resume, not from a practiced speech, but from somewhere else. She spoke about the housing crisis in her old neighborhood, about losing her favorite bookstore to gentrification, about watching her mother take night shifts just to keep the lights on. She spoke about how loyalty wasn't words, it was staying, even when it's inconvenient. When she finished, the room was quiet. The man finally leaned back. "Interesting." The camera cut. A woman approached and whispered something into his ear. He frowned, nodded, and turned back to Claire. "There's been a mistake," he said slowly. "You weren't the person we were supposed to meet." Claire's stomach dropped. "I thought you were—" "Never mind," he added. "But what you said, it mattered." She stood slowly, cheeks burning. I should go." He didn't stop her. But as she reached the door, he asked, "Do you have plans this weekend?" She turned startled. "Excuse me, I need someone," he said, "to help me fix something. Personal. For 48 hours. You'll be paid well. Think of it as freelance social strategy." Claire narrowed her eyes. "You don't even know me." He smiled faintly. "That's exactly why you might work." Claire hesitated just outside the glass conference room, fingers still curled around the strap of her tote. "I'm sorry," she said, voice tight. "Did you just ask me to fix something personal for you, like a gig?" The man approached her slowly, the kind of careful grace you'd expect from someone used to negotiating at high levels. He extended a hand more out of habit than warmth. "Elias Monroe," he said, "Director of Outreach at Harper & Sinclair." She shook it cautiously. The name hit her memory like a dropped book. Harper & Sinclair, a billion-dollar family-run philanthropy group, often confused with a hedge fund. Quietly powerful, deeply political. "I wasn't supposed to be in that interview," she said, eyes narrowing. "What exactly do you do here?" "I sponsor the foundation you thought you were applying to," he replied. "And I'm in need of a partner. Just for this weekend. A +1. Claire tilted her head. "You accidentally put me on camera, and now you want to hire me as your date?" "To my sister's wedding," he clarified, tone dry. "You have PR firms for this. I don't want someone trained. I want someone real." She folded her arms. "And I'm just conveniently real." He gave her a lopsided smile. "You answered questions no one expected with answers. No one rehearses. You stood your ground. That's rare." Claire stared at him. There was something behind his calm tone, something raw, almost bruised. She didn't know what it was, but it wasn't fake. Still, she crossed her arms. "Why me, really?" Elias sighed. "My sister's wedding is in Vermont. A weekend-long event. My ex-fiancé will be there. So will about 100 people who are certain I can't maintain a relationship that lasts longer than a fiscal quarter. It's all optics. I just want to survive it. And you want me to pretend we're together." "Not just together," he said. "That we make sense. That I'm not made of glass and spreadsheets." Claire stared at him. "This is insane." He nodded once. "So is pretending your life will change if you just nail the perfect interview. We all lie. This would just be a cooperative one." Her chest tightened. She should walk away. But her bank account was near zero, her rent due in 10 days, and something about him, this suit-clad contradiction of a man, made her pause. "What's in it for me?" she asked finally. He didn't miss a beat. 5,000. Travel included. Wardrobe if you want it. And a full-time consulting interview with Harper & Sinclair's actual team next week. Claire's jaw dropped. "That's a bribe." "That's a retainer," he said. Silence stretched between them. Claire glanced toward the city skyline glittering outside the window, then back at Elias Monroe. "You have 3 minutes," she said. "Convince me this isn't a mistake." He didn't blink. "It's already not," he replied. Claire sat across from Elias in the back seat of the black town car, staring at the leather-bound notebook he had just handed her. On the cover, in embossed gold lettering, were the words, "The Monroe Protocol, Public Appearances, and Private Damage Control." She flipped it open. Inside were bullet points, charts, a proposed timeline of conversation topics. "You made a playbook?" she asked. He looked almost embarrassed, which was new. "Old habit. When things spiral, I organize." Claire scanned the first page aloud. Rule 1. No contradicting personal stories in front of my family. Rule 2. Overperforming affection. Real is better than romantic. Rule 3. Exit strategy at all times. She raised an eyebrow. "This sounds more like a war plan than a wedding." "You haven't met my sister," Elias said. "Or my ex." Claire tucked the notebook into her bag and leaned back against the seat. "Fine. Let's talk basics. How did we meet at a non-profit conference?" he said without missing a beat. "You were giving a talk on housing equity." "I was bored." "You weren't." Claire smirked. "Flattering." "You mocked my tie," he added. more believable. And I offered to buy you coffee. You refused but corrected my terminology on zoning laws. Claire let out a short laugh. Okay, now it's definitely me. They drove the next hour practicing the story, the inside jokes that weren't real, the shared memories they'd invent. Claire hated how easily she began to enjoy it. By the time they reached the Monroe estate in Vermont, dusk was setting over rolling hills and lantern-lit trees. The house itself was absurd, like a colonial mansion crossed with a vineyard and a modern glass box. Your family lives here, Claire asked, stepping out of the car. They summer here, Elias said. Technically, no one lives anywhere when you're rich. They just orbit. Claire adjusted the strap of her overnight bag and swallowed her nerves. Before she could speak again, a tall woman in a sleek cream blazer stepped out of the front door. Her presence was immediate sharp cheekbones, even sharper eyes. Elias, she said coolly. You're late. And you're early, he replied just as evenly. Claire, this is my sister, Marianne. Marianne turned to Claire, smile razor thin. The girl from the subway. Claire blinked. Excuse me. Nothing. Marianne said breezily. I just assumed she was someone you picked up on the train. This is different. Claire opened her mouth, but Elias touched her arm lightly. Claire's a policy researcher, he said. She's leading community investment efforts in Brooklyn. Charming, Marianne replied. Then already turning, we're doing family portraits in the morning. I hope she photographs well. They walked through the front doors. Claire leaned toward Elias. Do I get hazard pay? He almost smiled. There's wine. I want hazard wine. The rehearsal dinner was held in a glass-enclosed garden behind the estate where chandeliers dangled from temporary scaffolding and linen-covered tables stretched beneath vines, trained to look effortless. Claire felt like she'd walked into the set of a movie one where she didn't belong. But she stood taller than she felt, hand resting lightly on Elias's arm. You okay? He asked under his breath. She smiled, teeth tight. Are you? Not even a little. They were announced together. A few heads turned curious. A few more turned calculating. Claire felt the eyes land on her like puzzle pieces trying to click into place. Then she saw her, the woman in red. Tall, elegant, bare shoulders, short hair curled neatly behind pearl earrings. Sabrina, Elias's ex-fiancée. She approached with 2 champagne flutes in hand and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Elias, she said smoothly, and this must be the +1 everyone's been whispering about. Claire Elias said the tension in his jaw nearly audible. Sabrina offered Claire one of the flutes. Welcome to the chaos. How long have you two been entangled? Claire accepted the glass, but didn't drink. 3 months. We met at a policy conference. How cerebral, Sabrina said. Elias always did like a woman with convictions. Until he didn't. Claire tilted her head, voice still sweet. And you always speak in riddles or just to strangers. You're threatened by Sabrina's smile froze. Cute. Claire took a sip. Also accurate. Elias cleared his throat. Excuse us. They walked away before Sabrina could land her next barb. I didn't ask you to do that, Elias muttered once they were out of earshot. Claire glanced at him. You didn't have to. He looked at her then, not the way a CEO evaluates a pitch, but the way a person sees someone they hadn't fully seen before. You're not like anyone in this room. I know, she said quietly. I feel it in my teeth. They found their seats near the center table. Between polite toasts and long-winded anecdotes about boarding school, Claire began to realize just how much Elias didn't fit in either. He sat too still, responded too formally, laughed only when someone else did. And yet, when she caught him watching her sketch notes on a napkin, her quiet habit of keeping herself anchored, he smiled like he remembered how to. When dinner ended, a string quartet began playing softly, and couples rose to dance. "Are we supposed to?" Claire asked. "I usually don't," Elias said. She rose anyway, tugging him gently. "Then let's make this part up too." They danced stiffly at first, then with growing ease. The chandelier light caught in her hair. His breath slowed, and in the hush between movements, Claire whispered, "We're really good at faking this." Elias's hand tightened around hers. "Yeah," he said, but in his voice something faltered. The morning of the wedding dawned cold for July gray skies and the faint smell of summer rain. Claire stood by the window of her guest room, tying the thin belt of a borrowed silk robe, watching the Monroe estate buzz like a beehive. She didn't belong here, not in a place where floral arrangements came by truckload and bridesmaids arrived in matching linen sets. But downstairs, in the center of it all, was Elias. Calm, polished, untouchable. Or at least that was how it had seemed until last night. Until the way his fingers lingered against hers when the music faded. Until the way he looked at her like she wasn't pretending anymore. A knock on the door. "Come in," Claire called, assuming it was a stylist, or Marianne with another passive-aggressive compliment. It wasn't. It was Elias's father. Tall, gray-templed, draped in a tailored navy suit. He stepped in like he owned the building, because Claire realized he probably did. "I wanted a word," he said, not waiting for permission. She stiffened. "Of course." He took a moment, looking her over, not rudely, just clinically. "You're not the type I expected," he said. "I'm not sure that's a compliment." "It isn't," he said plainly. "You've done well. Quite convincing." Claire blinked. Convincing. He folded his hands. Elias has always been easily distracted by causes and chaos. This stunt, bringing a stranger to a high-profile family event, it won't end well, for either of you. Claire's stomach twisted. "This isn't a stunt," she said slowly. He gave her a look that might have passed for pity. "My son doesn't need a woman with passion, Ms. Donovan. He needs a partner who won't cost him everything." She took a breath. "Then maybe he needs to decide what everything really means." The man nodded once, as if confirming something for himself, and turned to leave. Claire stood frozen long after he was gone. She didn't go to the wedding tent with Elias. Not right away. She needed air, space, a reason. It wasn't until she heard the opening notes of the string quartet warming up that she made her way down the hill, her green dress catching in the breeze, her heels sinking slightly in the grass. She spotted Elias near the altar, tall still, his tie slightly loosened. He turned the second he felt her near. "You okay?" he asked. Claire smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You didn't tell me your father was so charming." Elias groaned under his breath. "What did he say?" "Enough," she said. "To make me wonder if this whole thing is just another version of a deal, and I'm just part of the package." His expression darkened. "You're not. Then what am I?" He didn't answer right away. The string quartet began playing. Guests started turning in their seats. "Claire," he said, stepping closer. "This started as pretending." "I know, but somewhere between the wine and the dancing And the things we didn't say, I stopped acting. She swallowed. Then say it, she whispered. Before he could, a photographer's flash popped. Claire flinched, and just like that, the moment shattered. We should go, Elias said softly. But Claire didn't move. She was staring past him now, to the woman in red, to Sabrina, who was watching them and smiling. Claire slipped out the side of the tent as the wedding began. The air was thick with impending rain and unspoken truths. She didn't run. She didn't cry. She just walked. Past rows of white chairs, past servers arranging flutes of champagne, past the place where she and Elias had danced beneath hanging lights just the night before. She kept walking until she reached the old orchard. At the edge of the estate, rows of trees, now heavy with early fruit, the silence between them thicker than the hush before a storm. And only then did she stop. Because it hurt. Not the lie. Not the pretense. The truth underneath it. Because somewhere between the made-up stories and careful touches, Claire had started to believe there could be something real. And she had just watched it vanish, dissolved under the weight of a glance, a father's warning, a moment that never came. Behind her footsteps. She didn't turn. I didn't want this to end like that, Elias said. Claire still faced the trees. You mean with your father warning me I'll ruin your life, or with Sabrina smiling like she won something? He exhaled. Both. She turned then. I told you I wasn't here for optics, she said. But everything about this weekend, your family, this world, it's about the story they want to tell, and I don't fit in that picture. You fit into mine, he said softly. But Claire shook her head. You're still writing it with someone else's pen. Silence stretched between them. Then I don't want to pretend anymore, Elias said, his voice rough. But I don't know how to be real in front of people who only care about perfection. She stepped closer. Then start by being real with me, she said. Right now. No script. No protocol. Just you. Elias stared at her, stripped of his usual armor. I don't sleep well, he said. Not since my mother died. I wake up at 3 a.m. and check my email like it'll fix something. Claire blinked. I hate the smell of lavender, he added. Everyone says it's calming, but it reminds me of hospital rooms. A pause. Then I didn't bring you here to prove anything to Sabrina. I brought you because when you looked at me like I was a person, not a project, it was the first time in years I didn't feel broken. Claire's throat caught. She looked at him, really looked. No cufflinks, no corporate polish, just a man standing in an orchard hoping she wouldn't walk away. I don't need $5,000, she said. I know, he replied. I don't want a job at Harper & Sinclair. I know that too. I just wanted... Her voice trailed off. Elias stepped forward, brushing his thumb against her wrist, where her pulse beat fast and real. You, she finished quietly. If it was ever real. I just wanted to know, he looked at her. It was never fake. She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she whispered, Then walk with me. But this time, no pretending. Elias nodded, and together they turned away from the wedding tent, away from the flashbulbs and formalities, into the trees, barefoot, breathless, but real. A week later, Claire was back in Brooklyn. Her walk-up apartment, her cracked kitchen tiles, her thrifted mugs all felt quieter now. Not lonelier, just sobered. The whirlwind of Vermont had left a residue she couldn't wash off. She hadn't heard from Elias. She hadn't expected to. She'd walked away with nothing but the truth, and sometimes truth doesn't leave you with anything at all. Claire returned to her job. Her notes, Her little group of community volunteers who drank bad coffee and dreamed too loud. She even went back to sketching portraits of strangers she saw on the subway, half-finished stories she could invent. But every time she sketched someone who looked like him, jaw tight, eyes soft, she tore the page out before she finished. Then one afternoon, just as summer rain began tapping the window pane, someone buzzed her apartment. She wasn't expecting anyone. She padded barefoot down the hallway, pressed the speaker. Yes. A pause. Then, it's Elias. Her heart stuttered. I have soup, he added, and the world's worst apology. Claire stood frozen, then buzzed him in. He arrived soaked, no umbrella, holding a paper bag that sagged slightly with steam and effort. He looked less CEO, more human. His blazer hung off one shoulder. His hair dripped. Claire opened the door. You're wet. I deserve worse. She stepped aside, silent. He entered slowly, setting the bag on the counter. Lentil soup, still warm. I tried to remember what you said you liked. Honestly, I was guessing. Claire folded her arms. What are you doing here? I needed to say something. Elias said. Not with a script. Not in front of my family. Just here. Just you. She didn't speak. He continued, voice low. I left Vermont the same day you did. I skipped the wedding. Sabrina married some hedge fund guy who doesn't blink. My father was furious. Marianne called me impulsive. But for once, I didn't care. Claire blinked. I kept thinking about the orchard, he said. The silence. The way you stood there and asked me to be real, and I couldn't stop remembering how that felt. Like someone finally saw me. He stepped closer, then hesitated. I'm not good at this. Not the messy part. But I think, if you'll let me try, I could be good at us. Claire's voice was soft. You don't have to save me, Elias. I know, he said. But you saved me anyway. Just by being you. She looked at him, and slowly her arms dropped. She crossed the room, took the soup and placed it on the stove, then turned to him and whispered, Stay. Not for dinner. Not for a night. Just stay. He nodded, wordless. And as the rain fell harder outside, Claire handed him a spoon, and he handed her his heart, not wrapped in luxury or pride, but warm, simple, and finally real. 3 months later, they co-signed a lease on a modest brownstone with a leaky faucet and perfect light. Elias kept his firm but started teaching 1 night a week at Claire's Community Center Finance 101 for first-gen college students. Claire published an op-ed that went viral. Why policy needs to remember people. And every Friday night, they had soup. No chandeliers, no piano. Just them. Laughing, cooking, listening, not pretending.